Hey everyone, welcome back to this series on a very opinionated ASP.NET Core architecture. This is video number 6 titled Managed Identity. So, in today's video, we are going to go ahead and update the application that we've been playing around with. We're going to replace a set of code we did in the previous week where we were using a connection string, and instead we're going to use an Azure Managed Identity, so that way we don't have some long-lived secret essentially being used within the application. And then we're going to go ahead and deploy that application to Azure just so we see a working example. So if you're not familiar with an Azure Managed Identity is, let's do a little bit of a primer right now, and let's talk about secrets before we do that. So any kind of secret is something, it's just a long-lived string of text. If someone has access to it, they can use it. That's the idea behind a secret. You can see a list right there of essentially the bad things about it, right? It's long-lived. It's as long as it's there, it can be used, right? If someone gets access to it, they can use it. It's easy to leak, and by leaking it out, right, or worrying that it could get leaked, you know, in a Slack thread or email or whatever, right? Some kind of message. Then you have to worry about rotating it and just dealing with all of that. And that leads into the final issue there. There's a lot of work with managing it, right? Managing who has access to the secret, managing who has access to be able to rotate it and change it and update it and all of that stuff, right? It's just a pain. It's a lot of work that we have to deal with because we need that level of security, but it's not a thing that we want to deal with. So that's where Azure Managed Identities come in. Now, if you're familiar with service principals in Azure, this is an abstraction over a service principal. So even actually using a service principal, you still have that client ID, client secret, which is essentially a username password, right? More secrets. The Azure Managed Identity means that we do not have to use those. We just say, hey, Azure, give this thing an identity. I will give it some roles and permissions, and then we'll go from there. So the idea is you have your service being hosted in Azure Functions, Azure Service App, Container App, AKS, whatever, right? Something hosted in there. Then you have an identity, and this is some other service that's used by your application, and your identity has a set of permissions, a set of roles. So you create your identity, and then you're going to assign a bunch of permissions to it, and then later you assign the identity to your application, and so now your application has all of those permissions, right? It's that three-step process. Now there are two types of identities within Azure. There's the system assign and user assign. So there are I guess pros and cons to using a small amount of trade-offs. Really what it comes down to is what your preference is in terms of which one you want to use, system assigned or user assigned. Personally, I think it's easier to use system assigned because that goes directly onto the service itself. Now, that is completely a preference thing. I've met people before who say the opposite. They say that user assigned is easier to work with, and it's just preference. That's all it comes down to, right? Small set of pros and cons. For this video and any future demos we're going to be doing, because I'm the one making these and I'm opinionated, we're going to be using system assigned for all of these. So if you care about wanting to learn the difference between system assigned and user assigned, you can go ahead and do that research yourself. We're not going to be going over that in these videos. All right, and lastly, closing, just a reminder, hey, these are very opinionated things that I'm going over with this ASP.NET series that I'm going through. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything, we have the YouTube comments right here in this video that you can go ahead and enter comments to, or you can find me on social media. Direct links are on my site, programmerl.com. Blue Sky and LinkedIn are the two main ones that I use. All right, all of that stuff out of the way, let's look at some code. So right here we have our feedback app, the thing we've been working on for a while. This is just copy pasted directly from the previous week of episode 5. I guess I've been releasing these semi-weekly, so in my mind I just keep saying week, but really video 5. So the very first thing that we need to do is we need to be able to start using managed identities, and in order to do that within our C# application, we need to go and add a new Azure Managed Identity, or sorry, a new NuGet for the managed identities. So it's going to be Azure.identity And I'll go ahead and add that, Azure Identity. I will accept all of those licenses, and I assume I've probably read them at some point. No, I haven't. And then just because I'm here and it bothers me, I'm going to update all of these other packages. I'm sure it's fine, right? Yeah, it's probably good. All right, anyway. Now we have our Azure.identity package added to our C# project. So now we can start using certain objects that are managed identity related. All right, cool. So we are now in over here in the ratings repository.cs file. And if you remember from the previous week, we went and created a method that will create the object to talk to Azure Table Storage, in this case, the table client. And we're passing it the connection string. And so if you remember, the connection string was actually set up with .NET Aspire. So we were doing this at runtime. We were starting this up, and we were connecting to Azure Table Storage being hosted in a Docker container. That's what is happening with all of this stuff right here. Now, we're not going to be using this anymore. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and delete that right there because we're not going to be using a connection string. So we're going to go ahead and I guess we'll go ahead and do that too so we don't have any other issues. Actually, now that I think about it, we don't need table storage at all or storage. We're not going to need any of this stuff anymore because we're going to go ahead and use a managed identity. Now, I do want to call out right now because some people might have some questions. Well, why not use a managed identity locally against Azure Table Storage? And the reason for that is it's not set up to do that well right now. What I can do is I can go ahead and set up .NET Aspire to go ahead and connect to an existing instance of table storage hosted within Azure. And I can go ahead and use a user assigned managed identity against that, but not a system assign. So basically, there are some pros and cons to doing this stuff within Aspire. Right now, it's just it's not set up to do the things that I want to do with it. And this is basically the end, I guess, of what we're going to do for some of the extra stuff with .NET Aspire. Right now, we're leaving this alone. I still like using .NET Aspire. It's an amazing tool, I guess. I don't know what to call it. It's not an SDK or something. We'll call it a tool. It's a really useful thing, but we're basically done using it for a lot of the rest of the videos that we're going to go through for this stuff. So all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and actually start making changes to this code. So the very first thing, we're not going to be using a connection string anymore. Let's go to the config object over here. Instead of a connection string, we're going to use a URL. So that'll just be a string we have there, and we're going to go ahead and copy paste that. Now, I said I already have this instance of table storage created, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy the URL to the storage account. So we will not include the table name that's passed in as a separate parameter, right? Separate parameter right here. So that means that we have to go to our app settings.json, and I should probably go to the development one. And let's go ahead and add that. URL and paste that in. I need to put the double quotes first. All right. So we now have that set there. Cool. And we're going to keep the same validation. All that is required. All that fun stuff. Cool. That's all we need there. So we're getting some red squigglies. So let's make a few other changes for URI equals new, and this does have to be a URI object. So let's say storage config dot value dot URL. Cool. And so that will go here. And then we're going to say table name. We'll just, add some of this stuff here. Perfect. And then lastly, the final thing that we're going to, the final parameter that we're going to want to set is called token credential. And let's see, default Azure credential. Perfect. Okay. So, the constructor has changed now to our table client. So instead of passing a connection string that has everything we need to connect to it, we have to pass in a few other things. So fully the full HTTPS whatever URL to the table storage, the name of the table that we're going to be talking to, and lastly our credential. So the way this credential works is it's going to go ahead and grab a token from somewhere, somehow, right? That's essentially what we're doing with this highlighted line right here. So what we're saying is, hey, code, look at a bunch of different places and grab the first token that you can see. Now I'm going to hit F12 to go to the definition of this thing, of default Azure credential. And then we're going to go into the base one over here, and we're going to go to default Azure credential factory class. And I'll go to the definition of that thing. And then at some point, notice that it, where is this? Eventually it calls this method, right? We'll skip ahead. It calls this create credential chain method, which is a collection of places to look for a valid token. So in this case, now it has a couple of if statements to like kind of whittle down where to look, but essentially it's still going to be a collection of places. So when this is running on my local machine, or really anywhere it's running, right? Anywhere that this is running, this could say, hey, let's go ahead and try to find a token here in Visual Studio, right? If I'm signed into Visual Studio, there is a token it can try to grab from. If there is no token, then it's going to go to the Azure CLI. If there's no token, PowerShell, et cetera, right? And you can kind of see what these flags are, right? This is decompiled code, right? If we're in a dev or a prod environment. So there's a little bit of intelligence behind it around trying like, okay, well, if we're in production, then let's try to limit where we want to look, right? Environment variables, workload, or managed identity. Now, the cool thing about just flat out using default Azure credential is it's just going to, by default, check everywhere, every possible thing, and we don't have to think about it too much. Now, if you want to, you can start passing in options, new, whatever, and you can start saying, hey, let's go ahead and exclude specific ones. So if you know for an absolute fact, when your application is running, we are never going to use the interactive browser credential, you can go ahead and say, yes, let's exclude that one from this list. Now, I've said that this is a very opinionated way of doing things, so let's go to what I think is a little bit better. So, like I've said, the downside to the good thing about the default Azure credential is that it looks everywhere. But the downside is it looks everywhere. And that actually can mess with the performance of your application, specifically cold boot performance. So if your application is off and you're starting up for the first time, it has to check a bunch of places for that token. That adds time. It adds seconds, multiple seconds to your startup time. So if this is one of those situations where your production instance always has at least one warm instance running and you don't really have to worry about starting new instances, then you're probably fine. You don't have much to worry about. If you're in like a serverless situation, or you're in something where hey, I just want this to be able to turn off in production or something, then this isn't going to be the best choice for you. And in that case, you're going to want to use the chained token credential. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and copy paste some code that I already have written over here from the other screen, just like I've been doing. And we have the what I'm calling the Azure Credentials Manager over here. So we have some red curly braces stuff going on, but it's okay. We'll get to that. So what we're doing is, instead of using the default Azure credential, we're using the chained chained token credential. And the way the chained credential works is you just say, hey, this is my own custom thing, and I'm just going to tell you which things to add to it, right? So if we go back to the default is start with everything, exclude what you don't want to use. Chained is the opposite, is start with nothing and add what you want to use. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say, by default, we only ever want to check for the managed identity credential unless we have a specific config flag saying, no, I do actually want to use this. I'm running this on my local device, so let's go ahead and use the Azure CLI credential. And just so you know, when I'm running this locally, I always like to just use the CLI credential. It's just easier. I'm signed in, as you can already see right here in my terminal. I'm probably hiding some of these GUIDs because I think I'm not supposed to show them to other people. I'm not really sure. But if I figure out how to edit the video to hide those, you won't be seeing those full GUIDs. Anyway, I'm signed in with my CLI. That's how you can see that there. So we have this curly bracket or red squiggly lines under this config class, and that's because it doesn't exist yet. So let's go ahead and actually add it. And I'm going to do like I keep doing, and I'm just going to copy paste from another file over here. All right, so we have this Azure credentials config, and this is, notice how this is different from the other config, because up here all of this stuff is required, right? And we even have some validation going on for this config. For the Azure credentials one, we're gonna have some defaults, right? As you've kind of already seen, the default over here is use the managed identity credential. But if we have a value, and notice the curly or the question mark there, we're saying, well, if this thing isn't null and the value is actually true, right? Well, if it's null, it's going to be false. That's the idea. But right, so if we're going to go ahead and if we have a value and that value is true, then we're going to run it locally and improve that performance a little bit. So when we're deployed, that config value just flat out won't even be set. So that's the idea there. Now we do still need to register this. So let's go ahead and register that config. I will copy paste a bunch of names over here. That name, and let's say add option. Oops, nope. Add options. There we go. Perfect. That's it. That's all we need. In theory, this should be building. No, this isn't building yet. Okay. Let's go back here, because the last thing we need to do, we actually need to use it. So I have credentials manager, and scroll up here, and we'll go ahead and add this creds manager, and it's private read only you. Add the underscore. Perfect. And so instead of this, we're going to say need the underscore again. Oops. Azure token credential. So there we go. Now we should be able to use it. Oh, we need to get rid of that other closing parenthesis, because too many is a problem. Gotta love compilers. All right. So again, just a reminder, when we create a new instance of this object, we're just going to check if we're running locally, use a CLI. Otherwise, use the managed identity, because for our application, we know it's deployed to Azure at that point. So that's fine. So that's the token we're going to go ahead and use. Alrighty. So this should be good. So I'm hitting Control-Shift-B. This should compile. Oh, nope, I'm wrong. Sorry, one last thing that I completely forgot to do. Let's go back to the program. We need to register that. So let me copy paste the full name to save myself some embarrassment on mistyping things. There we go. All right, now Control-Shift-B, build has succeeded. Cool, so let's go ahead. I'm gonna hit F5 to run this. I'll give that a second. Hey, cool, Aspire is running. Now I'll go ahead and go to and this should fail. I'm gonna hit 5, we'll execute it. This will take a second. And loading. I might edit depending on how long it takes to load. This you might do a little bit of a time jump here. Okay, this is taking a while. Just trust me, this is gonna fail. Let's move on. The reason it failed is because I, Al, do not have access to this table storage. So if we go to Azure, whoops, we have to go to the correct thing. If we go over here to Azure, what we need to do is give me permissions to get and do stuff to this table. So access control IAM, and I'm going to go over here to add a role assignment. And if you're not familiar with these roles, I'm not going to be talking about them specifically, but you probably should spend a little bit of time getting familiar with all of these roles within Azure, or some of the roles, or at least the concept of how they work. So we're going to search for storage table data contributor. So that's the read-write access to this table storage. We'll hit next, and I will assign the permission to myself. I'm the only person here, so I'll just click on the one guy there, select it, and review and assign. That's running. It takes some time. All right, so that role was just assigned. And hey, okay, cool. We're back here. All right, so change token credential failed, unhandled exception, failed. Oh, whoops. Okay, so this failed for a different reason, but it's okay. It's fine. I'm not going to edit this because it's okay. It doesn't matter. The reason it failed was because we don't have our config in here to say use the local token. So whoops. So let me actually go over here just so I can copy paste names again. Azure credential config. that, and we're going to say use CLI credential, and that is going to be true. All right, cool. So I'll hit F5 now. Give that a second. Hey, awesome. Okay, so now we can go over here and 5. We'll go ahead and run now. And hey, there we go. So we received 0 ratings. That's perfect. Let's actually create one so we can see that it is working. We'll go ahead and hit that execute button. Cool. And we'll go over here, execute 5. And hey, cool. We got our one comment, the one we just created. Cool. Now, just for the fun of it, just to prove to you that yes, we are actually using the token, I'm going to go ahead and log out. All right, cool. So now, I don't remember if I have to sign in, because the managed ID does have a lifetime. So I don't remember if I have to restart the application, but I'm restarting it anyway just for simplicity. So I'll go ahead, run to this get. Let me try it out. I guess we'll give it 5, and we'll go ahead and execute. And there we go. Cool. So I am not logged in, right? Because locally on my machine, we're not able to get that token. So cool. That's perfect. I will sign back in later. But now our code is now able to use a managed identity. So what that means is the next thing we need to do is deploy this whole thing. So we're going to do another thing that we should not be doing locally, and I'm going to right click and publish directly from Visual Studio. We should be using some kind of CI/CD pipeline, but this is just for a demo. So hit next. We're going to be deploying to an Azure App Service. We actually later on will be using something else, but I've gone and set up an Azure App Service specifically just for the purposes of this demo, like this video specifically. So we already have this one, and we'll go ahead. I'll skip that step. I don't need API management, and finish. Cool. So this is going to go ahead and create a profile, and once that's there, we're going to go ahead and deploy the application. Give that a second. All right, cool. So we are publishing and giving that a second, all that stuff, validating. All right, cool. So that's going to take a little bit of time to run. So while that runs, let's go over to our web browser, close this stuff because we're not using it, and let's look at the application. So over here on the left-hand side, on our settings, environment variables, we need to go ahead and change these things. Or actually, these are already set. Whoops. I've already gone in and set the values. So these are the same values that are in our app settings.json. That's fine. That can be stopped. Now, I guess I do actually need to start it, so that's fine because, I don't want to keep paying for this thing. So the application is now deployed. And so because of that, at the this endpoint, Rodri opinionated videos, ECB, whatever, right? So that's all running. So now we need to actually go ahead and use Postman to go ahead and run the application because we did not deploy Aspire. So that's fine. This is already set up. So I'll just go ahead and hit send. In theory, the application has started by now. Maybe it has its token by now, all of that stuff. Now, this will still fail, and this will fail for the same reason it should have failed earlier, running on my machine, because we still have not set up an actual token. So in this case, it should fail actually for that same reason that we got that big old long error message stack trace earlier saying that chained token credential thing manager, the chained thing, is not able to get a managed identity. And so this is going to take some time to fail because it tries repeatedly. So just trust me on this one. That's why it's failing now. So what we're going to do now is two things. First, we have to set up an identity on this web app. So this is that system assigned identity thing that I was talking about earlier. So over here on the left-hand side, under settings, we're going to click on identity. And then notice we have system assigned and user assigned. So I already have one on. Just to show you how easy it is, we'll go ahead and turn it off. So it is disabling it. Cool, it's off. All right. But now instead I'll go ahead and turn it on and hit save. So now this thing has an identity, right? It's just that easy to turn one on and off. And I have this little extension masking the ID. I'm deleting this later so I can go ahead and show this ID off. This is the identity ID, right, of the managed identity. Yeah, I'll turn this back on just in case. If I instead wanted a user assigned, then I can go ahead and create multiple user assigned identities and assign it to my service here. So I can actually have like 20 identities, or I don't know what the limit is, but some number of them, right? If you want 5, 10, whatever. Just a little bit of warning. A downside to having multiple identities is that when you use them, your application has to say which identity it's using for that operation. So for example, let's say you have one identity that has your read permissions to Key Vault, but you have 5 identities assigned, right? So your application, when it says read from Azure Key Vault, you have to say use this specific identity because that's the one with the permission. So that is the downside to having multiple, and part of that is why I think it's a little bit easier to use system assigned, because then you just, that one service has all of the permissions it needs. Okay, so our identity is assigned. Now we have to give permissions to the identity. So let's go back over here to the storage account, and just like we assigned those permissions to me earlier, we'll go ahead and add a role assignment. And this is going to be table contributor, and that'll go ahead and search and find contributor. No, why are you not finding it? All right, I'm just going to search. Just scroll down. Storage table data contributor. And instead of the user, we have to go ahead and click on manage identity. All right, so I have a few managed identities set up. We'll go to the one app service, Azure App Service, and there we go. So that's the one with this name. Notice it has the same name as the service up here, right? This is my web app. So that's the name of the identity. We'll go ahead and select that one, review and assign. It should be good. This is creating that role assignment. Perfect. So now if I go to my role assignments and I scroll all the way down here, we see on the bottom that I, Al Rodriguez, have contributor access to the table. Same thing with this that service specifically. So, all right. So now that that is assigned, we can go back to Postman. We can see, hey, oh, perfect. This is exactly what we were expecting before. This failed because at the time it did not have the identity. Now, sometimes it can take a little bit of time to propagate the permissions. So while we have just given permissions to the identity for that web app, it might not actually have those permissions yet. But I'm going to click send, and I'm going to hope for the best, right? Cross my fingers, and I will hope that now it has those permissions and that we don't have to wait too long for that to go, so that I don't have to edit a lot of stuff on the video. And we'll wait. All right, or I'll just have to actually edit the video. That might have to happen. Oh, this is taking a second. This one might be working. Crossing my fingers. Or I'm just sitting here looking like an idiot. One of the, yay, hey, it worked. All right, cool. All right, so that's the get, and just to prove it, here's the post. We'll give it a 3 because, no, didn't look good. I should have thought of something better for that. All right, yay, 204, no content, woo, and then we run our get, and then we get both of them, yay. All right, and just to really prove it, we can go back to our storage over here, go to our storage browser, click on our tables, and our, oh, whoops. I have 2. I must have, ratings table. I guess I gave it the wrong table name in config, or a different one, not a wrong one, a different one from last time. Anyway, doesn't matter. We have our values here, like we did. So that is essentially it. That's the code that we're making changes for right here. In the future, we are going to change this to not use Azure App Service. That was just for this demo. But yeah, the config is staying the same, right? We are using our URL and table name. We are not going to be using a connection string anymore. And our repository is a little bit more abstracted over here to go ahead and use our token credential manager thing, right? Yeah, so that was very limited, a very limited amount of code changes that we had to make. So just right here in our client, when we're talking to an Azure service, a little bit of stuff over here in the program CS, right, for our registrations of things. Had to add some config, and that was it. That was basically it. All right, cool. So next time we will be talking about I already forgot. Codifying our code. So we're actually going to talk about writing code to manage the way our code looks like. So that'll be a fun little video, and we'll see how far those demos go, because I haven't decided yet how in-depth to make it. So anyway, like I've said before, any questions, comments, concerns, etc., YouTube comments right here, and then social media, Blue Sky and LinkedIn. Those are the ones that I use the most. You can find those direct links on my site, programmeral.com. All right, until next time, take care, everyone.